We begin this episode by acknowledging the Wurundjeri and Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which we record and share these stories. We pay our deepest respects to their elders, past and present, and recognise the wisdom, connection, and culture that have shaped these lands for thousands of years. As we journey beyond the veil, we do so with gratitude, respect, and an awareness of those who walked before us, honouring their wisdom, their connection to the land, and their stories woven into the fabric of time. May we listen, learn, and tread lightly, carrying forward their legacy with integrity and heart. Welcome to Beyond the Veil Australia, where history, mystery, and the unexplained collide. From eerie encounters to cryptid lore, from channeled messages to scientific investigations, we're lifting the veil and stepping into the unknown. I'm Heather, your guide through the shadows, and together we'll unravel paranormal phenomena, strange synchronicities, and the mysteries that refuse to be ignored. Whether you're a skeptic, a seeker, or somewhere in between, this space is for you. Fasten your seatbelt, expand your thinking, and get ready to cross the threshold with Beyond the Veil Australia podcast. Welcome back to Beyond the Veil Australia podcast. Thank you all so much for following along and joining in on the episodes each week. The feedback that I've been getting has been really positively overwhelming. So I just want to say a really, really big thank you to everybody that's been listening or viewing on YouTube, interacting through social media as well. It's really, really appreciated, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to do this and that there's such a large interest. So a big thank you to you all. Today's episode is part 2 around ley lines. So we've recorded part 1 at this point, and that's left a lot of questions. So I'm hoping that in episode 2 or part 2 of this, we actually get to explore it a bit more in detail rather than just kind of looking at some of the origins and the surface level stuff. So I'm hoping that we can kind of get into it a little bit more today. There are places in the world where it really feels different, where time seems to stretch, where shadows linger, and where the air itself hums with something unseen. Some say these places have one thing in common: they sit on ley lines. In today's part 2 episode, we step into the unknown. Do ley lines act as conduits for paranormal activity? Are they amplifiers for hauntings, UFO encounters, and psychic phenomena? Or are they simply ancient roads carved by forgotten civilizations? From Australia's most haunted sites to unexplained aerial phenomena above the ley line intersections, we are following the grid to see where it leads. So, segment number 1 is haunted locations along ley lines. Now, this is a particularly interesting topic, actually, because I know I'd mentioned it in the part 1 episode of ley lines, and I had mentioned it through some of the other episodes as well, was the intersectionality between so much of the paranormal phenomena. It's not just kind of like, well, here's one topic and over on this side here's another. It's they all cross over and intersect in such cool ways that I feel like, you know, trying to break these topics down a little bit has been quite challenging because they do cross over, and it's it's proven slightly challenging because sometimes I feel like I'm sort of covering stuff that we've already covered in another topic. So yeah, it's pretty cool, but it's very hard to be able to sort of just pull sections in and compartmentalize them. I just don't think that it's a phenomena that we can do that with. So, if you have been listening to other episodes and we do cross over some of the same stuff, it just demonstrates how much they intersect. And, it's not just one thing causing a phenomena. It's sort of like what I feel is like they all kind of feed each other, if that makes sense. It's not like feeding in a negative way. It's more just, you can't have one without the other, right? It's like we can't have day without night. So, yeah, fascinating. So we're going to look at some haunted locations along the ley lines. So the first one we're going to look at is Monte Cristo Homestead, which apparently has the name of Australia's most haunted house. Some places hold echoes of the past, whispers of lives long gone, lingering in the air like unfinished stories. And in the quiet town of Junee in New South Wales, one such place stands as a monument to its own haunted history, Monte Cristo Homestead. Built in 1885 by Christopher and Elizabeth Crawley, Monte Cristo was a home of grandeur, a sign of wealth and prosperity. But behind its elegant facade, darkness seeped through the cracks. Christopher Crawley transformed Junee from a struggling town into a thriving railway hub, accumulating immense wealth. But wealth often attracts misfortune. Over the years, Monte Cristo became the setting for murders, suicides, and unexplained deaths, each leaving behind a lingering presence. Elizabeth Crawley, after her husband's death, became recluse for 23 years, locking herself in the upper floors. Some say her spirit never truly left. Visitors report ghostly apparitions, disembodied voices, and sudden, chilling temperature shifts. The shadowy figure of Elizabeth Crawley is often seen near the staircase, glaring at intruders. A stable boy, burned alive by his master, is said to cry out in the coach house. Paranormal investigators believe that Monte Cristo sits on a ley line, amplifying residual energy and spiritual activity. Some say energy lingers in places of extreme emotion, love, fear, pain. If ley lines are intended conduits, could they be intensifying the echoes of these tragic events? Port Arthur, a prison of spirits. Some places are prisons not just in structure, but in memory. Places where suffering leaves an imprint on the land itself. Port Arthur Penitentiary in Tasmania is one of them. Established in 1830, Port Arthur housed Britain's most hardened criminals, subjected to harsh conditions, executions, and psychological torment. The separate prison enforced total silence and isolation, breaking inmates mentally. Many prisoners never recovered. Executions were frequent, with convicts buried in unmarked graves, their identities lost to time, but perhaps not their presence. Reports include shadow figures, ghostly footsteps, and eerie whispers echoing through the ruins. The parsonage, once home to chaplains, is said to be haunted by a hooded apparition. The commandant's house, where prison overseers lived, is believed to be haunted by spirits of past inmates. Some researchers suggest Port Arthur's location is on a ley line, and that intensifies spiritual energy, making it a hotspot for hauntings. So if ley lines truly act as conduits, could they be holding on to the emotions and the pain of those who suffered here at Port Arthur, replaying them like a recording that never fades? Hanging Rock, a place of disappearances. There are places where time seems to shift, where reality bends in ways we can't fully explain. Hanging Rock in Victoria is one such place. The infamous Picnic at Hanging Rock legend tells of schoolgirls vanishing without a trace in 1900, an event shrouded in mystery. Though the novel by Joan Lindsay hints at true events, no official records actually exist. Yet, the legend persists. Witnesses have reported watchers stopping, lost time, and strange sensations near the rock. Some believe that Hanging Rock sits on a ley line, creating an energy vortex that distorts time and space. Paranormal researchers suggest the rock amplifies psychic phenomena, making it a hotspot for visions and altered states of consciousness. Visitors report strange sensations, lost time, and an overwhelming feeling of being watched, as if something or someone is still there. So are these ley lines amplifying the energy in these places, pulling us deeper into something beyond our understanding? Or is it simply the power of suggestion, the weight of history pressing down on us? These locations are quite well known if you live in Australia, particularly if you live in Victoria like myself. I remember I watched the film about Picnic at Hanging Rock, and it was, I get the goosebumps talking about it. It's just, it's a little bit creepy and just, and they did it really well. But I haven't been to Hanging Rock, but I've certainly seen it from a car multiple times. I have family that live in that direction of the state, so particularly as a teenager, we would be in the car and we'd see it. And even when I was a young adult and was able to drive myself, I'd go out with friends and we'd go and adventure everywhere and we would go past it. But I think there was just this part of me that was like, we're not going there. I'm not going missing. No way. So yeah, really interesting about Hanging Rock, that it's kind of talking about reports of it being a vortex. And it's interesting because, the TV show about Skinwalker Ranch, they've got like a big rock formation or a mesa. And through some of the experiments that they've done there, they've sort of been able to kind of establish through some of their scientific equipment that they believe that there is some sort of energy vortex there. And they have got some really great evidence that's come out of that you kind of can't dispute. You're kind of like, wow, how do you explain that? So I wonder, just out of curiosity, if it's maybe a similar type of energy field or a similar type of natural structure that's, just in a different part of the world. It's kind of interesting to think about that a little bit, because I think Hanging Rock, unless you know about it, you just don't know anything about it, really. Like you have to, I suppose it's like any country, you will always have those infamous places in your own state or your own country that realistically it's sort of only that area that knows about it. It's not necessarily a worldwide thing. Even like Port Arthur. Now, Port Arthur Penitentiary was not just a historical site for the reasons that I had talked about before. It's sadly, in 1996, a young man had committed Australia's worst massacre at this site. And that was the turning point in Australia for our gun reform, and making it far more difficult for people to be able to access firearms. And, there were two children that had passed away with their mother there, and their father had actually started a foundation in their name over the last 20 plus years, and these were just beautiful little girls. And it's kind of scary, because those girls at that time, I think I may have been just a little bit older, or right on the same age as them. So, there's that part of me that I get like, yeah, getting the goosebumps again. Like it's a bit, it's scary, and they're just, you know, three of the victims of that atrocity out of many. So, it's interesting that, not only do we have the extremely historical side of that from when the penitentiary was built, but we also have a massacre and something that was a really horrendous event take place at that site. And so it also maybe is that, yeah, is it on a ley line, and you know, is there some connection to it now all being amplified after having such a horrific event take place there? Really interesting. And again, that's because I love true crime as well. But that again, that's a story that I was well across through a lot of reading that I did on true crime. I've got a lot of true crime books. Not that I get to read them often, but particularly when I was a teenager, I was able to read them. But yeah, really interesting there. And then I guess, even kind of looking at the Monte Cristo homestead, I have heard that Junee is a town in New South Wales that has been quite well known for a lot of paranormal activity. So, I haven't really learnt much about Monte Cristo, so it was kind of interesting being able to hear just on a very sort of surface level about some of the things that had happened at the homestead there. And yeah, if you live in New South Wales, or you're a paranormal investigator in New South Wales, or you have more knowledge on it, like, please hit me up. I'd love to learn a little bit more about it, and hear about it from people that live in the area or have investigated there. I could imagine that your stories or your knowledge would be really, really interesting. So yeah, there's a little bit about some of the haunted locations, and these are just a couple that we're sort of mentioning. I know in part one we talked about Uluru, and there was a group of people that had gone there in 2020 that were going for like a meditation, and the belief is that it's sort of like Uluru is where the ley lines converge. And so it was sort of interesting to kind of cover off on that a little bit. Um, that's just another, it's a very sacred site in First Nations culture, but it's, if we can understand the ley lines, it would make sense in other ways that it would be very sacred, is that there is this connection, this energetic spiritual connection to the creators and things like that. So really interesting. I think haunted locations is, again, it's another topic that I've got lined up to cover off on and explore some more. So again, I love watching lots of paranormal investigations. There's quite a few investigation teams that I follow on YouTube, and sometimes I don't always get the opportunity to watch lots of investigations, but I certainly try to when I get those moments of downtime. So yeah, and it's hard because I've got a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, and each time I get the opportunity to sit down and watch something, it's like they're right there, and I'm like, oh. I mean, it's probably good for you guys to just not be afraid of it, but at the same time, you're also really young, and I really don't think that I want to scare you that to that point where you're having nightmares. But weirdly enough, both my kids, they're a bit like me, where they love the Halloween vibe, and they like all that sort of stuff. But I suppose it's probably a little bit more age appropriate. We'll watch like the Mickey Mouse spooky things, and some of the more age appropriate sort of haunting or Halloween themed things. But yeah, it's funny. It's every time I kind of want to sit down, and it's not just because I'm picking up research options for my podcast. It just, well before that, it was just like, I just want to sit down and watch this because I like it, and it just it's weird. It's like a form of self-care for me. So, same as true crime. I don't know. That might be not a very positive sign for me that I like true crime and paranormal stuff as a way to decompress. That might be concerning, but when you're a heavily traumatized person, these things, it's just like, it soothes the soul weirdly. Yeah, so there you go. There's some interesting fun facts. But we are now going to look at segment 2, which is about ley lines and UFO encounters. And the interesting thing with this is I know that when I introduced this episode that there might be some areas that cross over, but I think it's important to kind of see where the intersection is, and particularly because, with UFO and UAP phenomena, it's something that I can see that the research is ever increasing. There's a lot more people talking about it, and there's a lot more people coming forward with information about potential disclosure and things like that. I have some thoughts on that, part of me is kind of like, are we already going through a disclosure stage without actually knowing that we're going through it? That's something that's sort of been on my mind a little bit the last 6 months, but it's sort of only really as I've explored more in my podcast, and there's more and more stuff coming out about UAPs and a potential disclosure that you sort of can't help but have that thought of, are we sort of already in the middle of it? So yeah, let's jump in and have a look at the connection between ley lines and UFO or UAP phenomena. Ley lines don't just connect haunted locations. They may also intersect with UFO or UAP hotspots. Could these energy pathways be linked to unexplained aerial phenomena? Across the world, reports of strange lights, electromagnetic disturbances, and missing time often occur near ley line intersections. But why? Some researchers propose that ley lines act as conduits for high-frequency energy fields, creating hotspots for sightings. Could these ancient pathways be more than just geographic markers? Could they be a part of a hidden grid, one that extraterrestrial intelligence has long understood? Take the Westall UFO incident of 1966, a mass sighting over Melbourne. April 6, 1966. Westall High School, Melbourne. More than 200 students and teachers witnessed something extraordinary. A silver, disc-shaped object hovering above the school grounds before descending behind a row of trees. Witnesses described the craft as metallic, round, and moving with unnatural agility. Some claim 5 identified aircraft pursued the object. Through no official records, there's nothing to confirm this. When students reached the landing site, they found flattened grass, burned patches, and electromagnetic disturbances. Some researchers suggest Westall sits near a ley line intersection, amplifying the event's intensity. So was this simple misidentification? My personal favourite, a runaway weather balloon? Or did ley lines play a role in drawing something and something unknown to this location? Interesting. And again, because I live in the state of Victoria and Melbourne, I live about an hour out of Melbourne. And I know I touched on this it might have been one of the first episodes with the UAPs, but the Westall train station is actually on the train line that if I ever go into Melbourne and I go on the train, it's actually on that train line. So, it took me ages to realise that. And then one day I was on the train and I was going into Melbourne and I saw, Westall, and I was like, Westall, not the Westall that had the UFO sighting in 1966. Like, is that Westall? It took me a while to figure it out. And then I did, and it was kind of like, oh, interesting. So yeah, it's one of those ones, and another one of those experiences or stories that you kind of hear about. And I don't think sometimes you realize how, I suppose, local potentially you are to certain historical events. But, when you sort of start learning more about them and you kind of go, oh my God, I've got a connection because I live near it, or, like it's just really fascinating. But moving on to Gosford in 1994, a night of unexplained lights. December 1994, Gosford, New South Wales. A quiet night turns into something inexplicable when multiple witnesses report bright, pulsating lights hovering over the water. Witnesses describe a large, glowing craft emitting beams of light into the ocean. Police officers on patrol confirm the sighting, describing the object as moving erratically, defying the conventional flight patterns. Some researchers believe Gosford sits on a ley line convergence point, intensifying the electromagnetic anomalies. So again, could ley lines act as beacons, drawing unidentified aerial phenomena to specific locations? Or is there something deeper at play? Nullarbor Plain, a highway of strangeness. The Nullarbor Plain, an endless stretch of desolate land where the sky seems impossibly vast. For decades, travellers have reported something unusual here, something watching from above. The Nullarbor is infamous for UFO sightings, missing time experiences, and electromagnetic disturbances. In 1988, a family travelling across the plain reported a glowing object pursuing their car, lifting it off the ground momentarily before vanishing. Some researchers suggest that Nullarbor sits on a ley line corridor, creating an energy vortex that distorts time and space. Are ley lines amplifying these encounters? Or is the Nullarbor simply a place where the veil between the world is thinner? Wow, I didn't know about the Nullarbor one actually until I was researching, and I've got goosebumps again. Today's episode is just giving me lots of goosies. It's like some of the stories I know, some of them I don't know, or I've only kind of come across them through the research. And I'm like, ooh, that's a little bit eerie. But sometimes, again, I've said it before in other episodes, when you kind of get to read through it again, and it's like this, I don't know, you just get this like moment of just intensity where it's like, oh, holy shit, like this is insane. And particularly because it's, some of these locations or these areas where there's amplified phenomena of completely different areas of the paranormal, it's really eerie. It's like, whoa, dude, this is getting to me a little bit today. Not in a bad way, in a really cool way. It's just like, ooh, the heebie-jeebies are coming out for me today. So I hope they're coming out for you too, because that means I'm doing my job right. So, the mystery of ley lines and UFOs. Are ley lines simply geographic coincidences, or do they hold something deeper, something unseen? We've explored their connection to hauntings and UFO encounters and the electromagnetic anomalies. And we're now moving into segment 3, which is the energetic phenomena. So channeled impressions and psychic insights. Ley lines as psychic transmitters. Some believe ley lines don't just amplify paranormal activity, they act as transmitters of psychic insights. Could these pathways enhance intuition, energy work, and channeled messages? Across cultures, ley lines have been linked to heightened consciousness, healing practices, and unexplained energetic phenomena. But what if they are more than just ancient pathways? What if they are conduits, channels for something beyond the physical world? In this segment, we explore the unseen forces that may flow through ley lines, from energy healers who claim to harness their power, to spiritual traditions that believe these lines connect us to a higher consciousness. We now get to step into the realm of psychic phenomena. Ley lines and healing energies. For centuries, healers and energy workers have sought out ley lines, believing that they hold the key to spiritual and physical restoration. Could these pathways be reservoirs of Earth's energy capable of influencing well-being? Some practitioners claim ley lines radiate energy, which can be harnessed for healing consciousness expansion. Ancient traditions, including Feng Shui and Aboriginal songlines, suggest that ley lines align with natural energy flows, influencing health and harmony. Some believe ley lines enhance meditation and energy work, making locations along these grids ideal for spiritual practices. So, could they be channels for energy influences in human consciousness? Could they be more than just geographic markers? That's really interesting because I know I touched on it in the previous episode, and I have referenced this particular podcast. And breaking news, I've still bloody forgotten the name of that podcast, but I remember the name of the woman who was providing this information, and her name is Rachel Vaughan. I will try and put that in the show notes. But yeah, really, really interesting, and something that she was talking about, amongst other kind of psychic phenomena and different things around secret societies and biological components with potentially different lineages through the spiritual realm. But one thing that she was talking about was actually ley lines. And I had referenced it in our last episode where it was that discussion about they are basically like energy lines that can actually take on energy and amplify the overall consciousness of the world. And so there was reference to secret societies that had been utilizing these ley lines for negative purposes and sort of really putting negative energy into the ley lines. But there's also a lot of people now, and particularly when we talked about Uluru as well with the mass meditation in 2020, is that, it's you can't have one without the other. So yes, you can put negative energy in there, but you can also put positive energy in there. And so what was interesting was that, particularly through the COVID pandemic, like that was a really big turning point where this was the way the world was. This is where we're going forward. And it was a really pivotal point for that. And so with Uluru being believed to be like a convergence spot where these ley line intersections occur, there was a group of people that wanted to do the mass meditation to help promote the positive energy into the convergence part of that energy field and allow it to disperse down the ley lines to other convergence points. So it is really interesting that it's not just talking about, geographically where they sit, but what the believed intention is with ley lines. And so the psychic phenomena, like, there's, again, it comes back to the Feng Shui as well. It's about where you position yourself as to what energy is going to flow through. And I think if we've got natural energy lines produced by the earth, and we're now in a point where we've sort of had like a mass awakening. I'm not sure if that's quite the right word because it sort of feels like it's still the wrong word, but like like an increase in awareness might be more of what it is rather than like an awakening. That kind of sounds really like grandeur, but it's just really interesting. So yeah, Rachel Vaughan was her name, and yeah, she's got some really interesting knowledge, and I really enjoyed learning a little bit more about ley lines, obviously, but learning a little bit learning more about what potentially with my lineage of connection to the spiritual realm is through different biological theories, I suppose, that are now emerging. So yeah, I hope that I can find the name for that podcast again, but Rachel Vaughan was the guest who was speaking on it. So yeah, definitely check her out as well. She's on YouTube too. But yeah, really interesting to kind of see the interconnection here between different forms of paranormal or spiritual phenomena. Ley lines and the higher consciousness. Certain traditions suggest that ley lines connect to the higher consciousness, influencing intuition and psychic abilities. Across many cultures, these pathways have been linked to visions and altered states, and also profound spiritual awakenings. And I suppose profound spiritual awakenings, if you look at it more on an individual level, that's probably a good phrase. But I think on a global level, awakening sounds like it's not the right fit for that. But we've also got sacred sites and spiritual awakenings. So many ley lines intersect at ancient temples, stone circles, and sacred sites that are places long associated with heightened awareness and spiritual transformation. Some believe ley lines act as conduits for divine energy, allowing individuals to access higher states of consciousness. Reports of visions, prophetic dreams, and intuitive downloads often occur near ley line intersections, suggesting that unseen forces are at work. So again, could it be more that they're just more than pathways? Are they more about connecting with ancient technology and the fact that we're still in a time of development where we're still not able to fully comprehend how ancient technology worked and how there's the spirit and the science, like how do they intertwine? Maybe we're just not quite at that evolvement to be able to properly understand it. I think we can certainly understand a fair amount of it, but I still feel like it's like an iceberg. You'll understand and see the top of it, but there's obviously always going to be more underneath that we're just not at that point to be able to see yet. So very interesting. So again, coming back to the psychic phenomena, some believe ley lines don't just carry the energy, they carry messages. Psychic impressions, channeled insights, and unexplained transmissions have all been reported near ley line intersections. Some mediums claim ley lines enhance their ability to receive channeled messages, acting as spiritual highways for information. Reports of automatic writing, telepathic impressions, and unexplained knowledge downloads have surfaced near ley line hotspots. Some believe ley lines connect to cosmic intelligence, allowing individuals to access universal wisdom. So, are they ancient roads or something more profound? Something waiting to be unlocked? That's really interesting, and I think that's really cool that it's breaking down different elements of different subtopics of what the overall reports are, and then some more personal things or more reported experiences. It's really kind of cool, and the more I think about it, the more I'm kind of wondering about ley line placement in my local area, because there's been some interesting things that have come up in this episode and the last one that have just kind of, it's like a little light bulb moment where I'm like, I probably should look into that. Just with different experiences I've had, that I'm curious to actually try and learn a little bit more about where ley lines sit, because I am well aware that the world is a very big place. So it'll be interesting to see, like, do ley lines just have one convergence point, like a spoke of a wheel, and they all just divert off? Or do they have like the main hubs, like a spoke of a wheel, and then at another intersection, something, like, does it create smaller convergence humps with smaller distances and lines that travel that essentially are all going to end up back at like a big convergence point? But I'm just curious as to whether that's a thing, because I haven't come across too much on exactly the specific structures, because I don't think people have been able to research enough about exactly how the ley lines work. But I'm looking forward to diving into that a little bit more, and I'm hoping to be able to sort of incorporate that a little bit more into the part 3 of the ley lines, to see if we can find a little bit more information about it, not just for our podcast, but also on a personal level. I'm really intrigued, just because there's been certain things that have occurred in the last couple of months that, the light bulb's going off for me, where I'm like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. Holy fuck. Really interesting. But we've kind of just scratched the surface on some of the experiences, some of the locations, and some of the reported phenomena at sites that are believed to be on a ley line or at a convergence point. So I feel like we've done not too bad so far. And I think, again, it's one of these topics that I mentioned it in part 1, that it does tend to get a little bit sort of lost. I think we have obviously UFO and UAP phenomena that's quite profound. It's there's everything on it. But then you've got these other parts like the ley lines that are very intersexual with it, but intersectional. Ugh, sorry, my brain is, I've got the heebie-jeebies today and my brain's just not working properly. But it's interesting how intersectional they are with some areas that aren't as well known, and I feel I really like to learn more about some of these intersectional parts where it's kind of like, well, we know all of this is happening, but what else is driving it? And looking at the ley lines, it's very clear that it's not just connected to one thing, it's connected to many, many things. And I think the more we explore into different topics, I think the more we'll find that there'll be a connection back to ley lines. So what I understand is that it's natural energies that's been created by the earth, because obviously the earth is going to have a natural electromagnetic field, and then where we've got the spiritual sides of that where they spike more because it's an additional phenomena on top of something that's already naturally occurring. So yeah, really interesting. I hope so far that you guys have been enjoying learning about ley lines, because we are now coming to the end of this episode. We're going to have a little look at, what we've talked about and what's going to be up and coming potentially in the next one. Are ley lines simply geographic coincidences? Or do they hold something deeper, something unseen? We've explored connection to hauntings, UFO encounters, and psychic phenomena, but there's still more to uncover. In part 3, we dive into the hidden grid, unlocking lost knowledge in ley line mysteries. Were they a part of an ancient knowledge system? And could they hold the key to something far greater than we've ever imagined? That's it for part 2 of the ley lines, and I can't wait to come back for part 3 and to delve into this even more. If you've had any experiences around any kind of paranormal phenomena, but if you've had any knowledge or experiences around ley lines, please definitely send me an email, send me a message, leave a comment, let me know. I'd be really interested to hear your story, and get to know more about your experience and what particular topic it's come under. But again, that's it for now. And remember, keep an open mind, keep your senses sharp, because sometimes it's not just the history in the ground, it's the energy beneath it.